might ask, why Kansas City? Well, I'll tell you, Kansas City is lovely. It's nice. People are great. They have great, bars too. The bar scene in Kansas City is one of the best in the Midwest. It doesn't beat out Chicago, but it's really good. You know, if you're ever in the area, I highly recommend Howl at the Moon. It's a dueling piano bar type of situation. Wonderful. Kansas City, though, we've got some kind of business to take care of shortly, in no short order of time. We've got another presidential election, and for the third presidential cycle, the Republican Party has decided to nominate the same failed candidate 3 times. Think about that. This man has been on the ballot in 2016, 2020, and 2024. Now, listening to some folks, the thing that comes to mind with, that individual that the Republican Party continues to nominate, the thing that comes to mind for a lot of people is just being fatigued, tired. A lot of young people, especially, and women, they say that, this guy is yesterday's news. They're still trying to refurbish him, the Republicans, but I don't think it's going to work. Now, sure, we're probably not going to win Missouri or Kansas, but I thought it necessary to remind folks in areas that are not, favorable to Donald Trump, why it's just not a good idea to go backwards. Yeah. So one person was just like, it's just too much. It's just too much drama and too much chaos. Whether you're looking at New York and what's going on in the courthouse there and all that drama, it's always drama, it's always chaos. Nikki Haley was right. She was absolutely right. It's always drama, it's always chaos around him. It was like that when he was president, too. They can continue, the Republicans can continue to talk about how great everything was under Donald Trump. For 4 years, hear them tell it, for 4 years under Trump, everything was just superb and fabulous. All was great with the world. It was sunshine and rainbow. We were all singing and dancing kumbaya. Now, there's just a little problem with this. Something's not adding up. Because if 82 million people, myself included in that 82 million, proudly, if 82 million people decided that you needed to get fired and they voted against you and voted for your opponent, President Biden, 82 million Americans can't be, delusional. There must have been serious problems. So they'll say, well, he got 75 million votes. But 82 is greater than 75, right? 82 is greater than 75. They seem to not be able to figure that out. And the problem with that theory that everything was great is that there shouldn't have been 82 million people to vote against him. If all of us were doing just so great under Trump, which we know we weren't, there wouldn't have been that much support against him, right? People couldn't wait to get him out of office. Now, like with everything else, they have to go back and rewrite, whitewash history and tell us, oh, you were better off under Trump than you are now. No, not at all. We were being terrorized daily, moment by moment under Trump, because there was always some chaos and drama. Always. From the very beginning, there was chaos and drama. He started off his whole ass administration talking about crowd sizes at his inauguration and how they were bigger than Barack Obama's inauguration. He started off on a lie. Because now we have the former First Lady, Michelle Obama, saying she flew over on Marine One and she saw the crowd and it wasn't as big as her husband's. But regardless, what did that have to do with governing? Whether you had a bigger crowd than Barack Obama. All that was, in my opinion, was a dick pissing contest. Barack Obama was no longer the president. He had left. So why for weeks and weeks did the press secretary, Sean Spicer at the time, talk about how big their crowd was at inauguration in comparison to Barack Obama? Go back and look. They were obsessed about that. That was the most important thing, not governing. Crowd sizes at an inauguration. Then when they did get to governing, it wasn't popular, the things they wanted to do, which was to repeal the Affordable Care Act. That wasn't popular. Now, he lied multiple times to members of Congress and to the American citizenry and said, you know what, I'm going to repeal the Affordable Care Act, but I'm going to replace it with Trump Care. Everybody said, okay, let's see Trump Care. Let's see what's in there. Kansas City, do you know to this day, nobody's ever seen the details or any legislation in terms of Trump Care? Nobody's ever seen it to this day. Nobody's seen what Trump Care was. So John McCain didn't buy into the bullshit. Because they were saying, Republicans were saying, repeal and replace. So John McCain said, okay, if we're going to repeal the Affordable Care Act, then we're going to vote for a replacement at the same time we're repealing it. Because the American people did like a lot of the provisions. They could have just made it better, but they weren't worried about making it better. At least Trump wasn't. He was worried about, doing away with the former president's signature piece of legislation, the Affordable Care Act. And this was out of jealousy and envy too, because it wasn't like there was anything that deeply problematic with the Affordable Care Act. All it was really about was he wanted to take away the signature piece of legislation that former President Barack Obama had passed during his 8 years. This was pure hatred, envy, jealousy, and disdain. But we could have saw that coming when he was saying he wanted to make America great again. Everybody knew what he was talking about. Y'all can try to pretend if you want to. Everybody knew what he was talking about. I heard, and all I heard was make America white again. Make a white man president again. Because he was saying that right after we had elected the first black president. We're not that stupid. We're not that slow. It's like, you might have been born at night, but we weren't born last night. So his audience was a bunch of angry white men who were jealous and envious that a black man had been president for 8 years. And he told them, come on, make me president again. Don't vote for a woman. We run this. That's what I heard. That's what it was. That's what it was in a nutshell. And, enough people voted for him. Enough people voted for the couch, really, though. If you want to talk about not making the same mistake twice and learning from a mistake, don't do the same thing a lot of people did in 2016, which was vote for the couch. Now, a lot of people voted for the couch in 2016 because they didn't think that Donald Trump could ever be elected president. So they were like, he's not going to win anyway. It's no big deal if I don't vote. And then by a nail biter in Michigan, Wisconsin, he won by 10,000 votes. Pennsylvania, 10,000 votes. Yeah, because enough people sat at home in Philadelphia, sat at home in Detroit, sat at home in Milwaukee, and was like somebody else would take care of business and stop it. And in 4 years, he pretty much hollowed and decimated the country. If you ask me, that's what I believe happened. He hollowed and decimated our country out in 4 years. Some people say he took the country back 60 years. I want to say about 100, a century. About 100 years. Yeah. There wasn't a day that went by where he wasn't being divisive. And people at first thought it was funny because he was attacking elected officials. When he had former President Barack Obama's name in his mouth, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, when he was, chastising former FBI Director James Comey, when he was chastising all those people, everybody thought it was funny, except for me. I knew it was going to seep down. Because I'm like, if this person is attacking reputable, credible people who have worked for institutions and been honorable public servants their whole entire life, it's going to seep down to us eventually, our individual choices. Yeah, draining the swamp. Look at how that's metamorphed. Kansas City. You know how many people work for the federal government in Kansas City? A lot. Well, don't you know, Kansas City, you're all swamp creatures if you work for the federal government. It went from the deep state being this shadowy, murky, uber wealthy people that hide in the dark to now your government job, you regular person who work in the federal government, you're the swamp. Don't take my word for it, take Trump's campaign's word for it. When Nikki Haley beat him in the primary in Washington, D.C., he crowned her Queen of the Swamp because she won the D.C. primary. So he's telling you all the wonderful people who live in Washington, D.C., they're part of the swamp. No matter what your profession is, you work at a restaurant, you're a swamp member because you just happen to live in D.C. It was insulting to the American citizenry. But I told you all, he wasn't talking about, some cabal. He was talking about us. He was pitting us against us. Citizen versus citizen. That's what was bound to occur and happen. And it did. Because you can't say thousands and thousands of people who work in an industry or a profession are swamp creatures when they're your own fellow citizens. But because, Republicans are not, in good standing with policy, their policies are not popular. So they have to create all of these conspiracy theories. And the conspiracy theories are about these, shadowy deep state people that ultimately end up being the ordinary citizens like you and me. Yeah, we become the swamp. So when he lost the primary to Nikki Haley in Washington, D.C., she was Queen of the Swamp out in D.C. So all you folks out in D.C., you're swamp creatures. This is how they feel about the American citizenry. If you don't go along with their Make America Great Again agenda, which I told you is Make America Hate Again, has nothing to do with America. Not all of us. It's not inclusive. They can say it all they want to. America first. That's a joke. I'm just like Mitt Romney. That's a joke. They're not concerned about the well-being of all Americans. They call people who disagree with them swamp creatures, you know, jihadists, all kinds of stuff, insinuate all kinds of crazy stuff about us. They don't even talk about policies. How many bills has Congress passed this year, the 118th Congress? Hardly any. Yeah. So, this started early on. Charlottesville, that was in 2017. Folks are trying to remove racist Confederate statues, rename schools, and you have white nationalists, use that as an opportunity to commit domestic terrorism towards their own fellow citizens. Alex Fields Jr., this is when I knew things were going to go sideways. Alex Fields Jr., who was a white nationalist and a white supremacist in the United States military, got into a Ford F-150 and rammed it full speed into counter-protesters, Black Lives Matter counter-protesters, murdering Heather Heyer, rest in peace to Heather Heyer, and harming and injuring hundreds of others. Now the president, at the time Trump, said there were very fine people on both sides, even though we saw the people with the tiki torches and the Confederate flags, chanting "Jews shall not replace us" in blood and soil, openly doing Nazi salutes. We saw all of it. They said they were very fine people, right? Then he said, the other side, they had bats and knives, and they looked mean too. Well, Cornel West, who's also running for president, spoke with Amy Goodman of Democracy Now! At the time that happened in Charlottesville. And what he told Amy Goodman, I recommend you all go and watch. Because he said, we were there, a group of clergy, about 12 to 15 of us, and we were, doing some prayers and things like that. And he said they swarmed them, the Tiki Torch boys, they swarmed them. And he said, had it not been for Antifa showing up in the nick of time, all of them, himself included, those Tiki Torch boys would have lynched them. He said it was Antifa that saved his life, because they came with the bats and cleared them out and protected the clergy. Yeah, they were going to start lynching people at night too. All the clergy, they were going to string them up, burn their bodies alive. They were going to do all kind of stuff. This is how sick those people were. And they make no bones about it, because all you have to do is read the metadata. They were all online talking about what Charlottesville really was, which was to start an ethnic civil war. They just used the removal of the Robert E. Lee statue, but it was really about starting a race war. So 2017, Donald Trump just takes office, and already his supporters want to start a race war. Welcome to the Donald Trump, tenure as president. There's a gazillion reasons why I would never vote for somebody like him. First off, he was never qualified to be president. That's a fact. Never took the job serious. That's another fact. And then he kind of allowed for people who were the most vile and detrimental elements of a society to roam around and prey on the rest of us. Didn't hold folks accountable. So long before we saw the insurrection attack on the Capitol, we saw what they did in Charlottesville. Many of those same people who were there in Charlottesville were also there on January 6th. It's the same folks, y'all. A lot of those people are the same people. That's a fact. That's a fact. He let him get away with it at Charlottesville, and he let him get away with it on January 6th. This is a fact. And, now, the thing is, they're like, the economy is horrible. The economy is so bad. But, here's the problem with that. We do have inflation. And the Republicans in 2022, when they ran for office, when they said it was going to be a red wave that didn't materialize, they said they were going to deal with inflation, right? So we're now in 2024. They got elected in 2022. Name me 3 pieces of legislation that the Republicans in the House have crafted to deal with inflation. I'll wait. Just 3. I'm not even asking for 5, as many fingers on your hand. Name me 3. 3 pieces of legislation that they've crafted to deal with inflation. Because it stands to reason if Donald Trump says that, the economy is so horrible under Joe Biden because of inflation, that his party would be crafting legislation that he would be supporting, right? To reduce it. Yeah, he said some bogus stuff about young people not being able to afford to buy homes under President Biden. Young people weren't able to afford to buy homes under Donald Trump either. The housing market has been elevated, extremely elevated for decades now. What young people do you know were buying homes under Donald Trump's tenure? Nobody. The same amount of young people that's been buying homes under Biden have been buying homes under Trump, which is a scant amount. Because housing prices are extremely high. And young people, with student loan debt, couldn't afford to buy anything. He's got a lot of nerve talking about young people. The only president in my memory in contemporary American society who's done a lot for young people is President Biden. Nobody had, abolished a penny of student loan debt. No president had ever done that until President Biden did. So, I don't know what to tell you, but I know a lot of young people that are grateful for that. To have $10,000 worth of debt, $20,000 worth of debt, to be scammed by certain financial or educational institutions, and then, not have to be penalized and have to pay all of those loans back when you went to fraudulent universities. Nobody had ever done that before President Biden. Yeah. Food prices are up. Yeah, that's true. But we have supply chain issues. Supply chain issues were going to impact no matter who the president was. They had already started impacting under his tenure. Maybe he thinks we've forgotten that folks were fighting in grocery stores over toilet paper. That you couldn't find bleach. And when you did, you had to pay an arm and a leg for it. Hand sanitizer was nowhere to be found. People were dropping dead in the meat packing facilities due to COVID. So supply chain issues were going to be an issue regardless of who became president. Inflation is a global phenomenon affecting all countries on this planet. Nearly every country has a higher inflation rate than the United States at the moment. Go to Europe, England. They would gladly trade the food prices in America for the food prices in England right now, today. They might not trade the food itself, but they would trade the prices. So whilst our inflation and our supply chain issues have been an issue for years now, the sky was supposed to fall out. He said if you elect my opponent, President Biden at the time, then the stock market would crash, right? He said that. Well, the Dow just hit 40,000 plus. Yeah, that seems like a crash to me. 40,000 plus. Record high. First time in the history. So, this is not really a defense of the economy or President Biden or former President Donald Trump. Because to me, honestly speaking, if I had to tell y'all the truth, no president can really solve inflation. That's something that, due to a lot of different factors. Supply chain factors, what people are willing to pay for goods and services, corporate greed, all of those things are factored into that scenario. And I haven't heard a single policy or proposal Donald Trump would offer to alleviate Americans currently going through high inflation. There isn't one policy he's offered. Because there is none. He just tells you, things wouldn't be this way if he were still president. Russia would have never invaded Ukraine. Have you all heard him say that before? Russia would have never invaded Ukraine had I been president. Maybe. Who knows? But here's what I do know. You can't talk about the crisis that other presidents have when the crisis you had when you were president, each and every last one of them, you botched. He's trying to act as though he didn't have crisis after crisis when he was president, and he mismanaged each and every last one of them. Charlottesville was a crisis. Hate crimes was a crisis. Fentanyl overdosing was a crisis. The border being wide open was a crisis. That's not new. The border was wide open under Trump too. Shout out to Congressman Dan Crenshaw out of Texas, the only Republican that actually will tell the truth and say the border has been open for decades now in America. It didn't just open up under President Biden. It's been open. Trump just did some bullshit bluffing and talk. Talk is cheap. That's all he did. He said Mexico was going to pay for the wall. Build a wall and pay for it. And they didn't. Shocking. No shit, Sherlock. Was anybody surprised that Mexico wasn't going to pay for a wall? Oh, yeah. And then, not only did they not pay for it, you all, there was no discussion about how the wall was going to be built with the Mexicans in collaboration. I don't know if Mexico didn't want to pay for a wall. What Mexico didn't want to do is have all the construction industry workers be American and nobody of Mexican ancestry and descent be making money off of that endeavor, and it's going to be a border wall that benefits both countries, but you're not going to allocate the jobs appropriately. No, they didn't want that. Nobody would want that. So, I'm not buying this whole thing about, if crises happen in somebody else's tenure, they wouldn't happen on your watch. When we had the PPP money due to COVID, that was botched too, right? How much wire fraud happened due to PPP? A whole bunch. Go and check the Justice Department website. A whole bunch of people got prosecuted for wire fraud. A whole bunch. Cities and counties that didn't vote for Donald Trump were terrorized and put on notice. They even had a whole blue state, red state list, naughty and nice list, that Jared Kushner was keeping. We were on the naughty list, you all. Shocking. Because we didn't support Donald Trump. So when it came time to give, Washington, Oregon, and California their appropriate, allocation of farm aid money, they starved us out. They didn't give us the money. Now think about that. You're the president of the United States, not the red states, the United States. And when it comes time to give us what we're due, he starved us out. You think we want to see him? No, we don't want to see him. We can't stand him. I mean, some people, like Ethan Norton, those white supremacists, they love him. But in broadly speaking, the general society, no, we can't stand it. Yeah, somebody said explain that to us why they love him. Well, they love him for one reason, really, and one reason only. White supremacists love Donald Trump because he allowed them to get away with doing the fucking crazy things that they've always wanted to do to other people. You see Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, how she harasses and bullies her own co-workers? That's what they want to do to their own fellow citizens of color. So Charlottesville, he allowed them to, go out there and be as racist as possible. January 6th, be as racist as possible. The whole time. QAnon, be as racist as possible. He allowed them to do it. The McMichaels to go in a pickup truck and shoot down in broad daylight Ahmaud Arbery. Derek Chauvin to put a knee on George Floyd's neck. He allowed all of that. He excused it and allowed it. He stoked and provoked it. Real people know this. Real people that really want to, be honest about it, they know it. And white supremacists, they know it too. That's why they love him. Because he allowed them to do what they want to do, which is terrorize the rest of us who aren't like them. Notice how they don't have a single goddamn policy they can point to. Telling me that oil prices were low. Yeah, oil prices were low in the 90s, but you didn't vote for Bill Clinton. Oil prices were low in the 70s, but you didn't vote for Jimmy Carter. Oil prices have continued to go up no matter who the president is. Oil prices are not the same as they were in the 1970s. Oil prices were low in the early 2000s in comparison to what they were when Barack Obama was president. Oil prices always continue to go upward. They never really go back down to the levels that they were. That's not a policy that the president controls, oil prices. No, that's all bullshit too. That's all, that's all you think you're being clever by half. Yeah, things were so great under Donald Trump. No, hate crimes were soaring by 3,000%, higher than the gas prices. You really want to come at me, Maka? Come at me. Hate crimes were higher in percentage than gas prices. So which one would you rather have? Higher gas prices or higher hate crimes? Because they never talked about the soaring rate of hate crimes in this country. They never talked about that. Never. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene has a lot of nerve to talk about the Black Lives Matter movement and all the violence that happened at those Black Lives Matter rallies. But most of that violence was happening because of people like Kyle Rittenhouse. Because of people like Sergeant Daniel Perry, who murdered another veteran in Texas. You had agents of the state and white supremacists come and infiltrate largely peaceful demonstrations demanding racial justice in this country. But they did that in the 1960s too with the Civil Rights Movement. They always do the same shit. And then they say, oh, well, when you defend yourself, you're causing the violence when you defend yourself. One of those Texas Republicans said, Black Lives Matter terrorized and traumatized the nation. No, George Floyd having a knee on his neck for 9 minutes and 22 seconds terrorized and traumatized the nation. The response, you can't talk about the response if you're not willing to talk about what led to the response. What terrorized the nation was having Breonna Taylor's home kicked down at 3 in the morning and shot. And then you heard how they tried to justify that. They said she was a drug dealer, right? No evidence, no proof. They just said she was a drug dealer. Then come to find out she was working as an EMT. We knew that woman wasn't no drug dealer. We knew. They had to justify all the fuck shit that was happening. And crisis after crisis after crisis that happened in Trump's administration, he botched. Completely mismanaged it. Always went and stoked division. President Biden and Vice President Harris should do the same thing. They should say, you know what? In my administration, people weren't outside fighting in the street over whether to wear a mask or not. In my administration, people weren't, having mask burning parties outdoors. In my administration, people weren't fighting, at least not currently, people are not fighting over whether they want to be vaccinated or unvaccinated. Kansas City, he's got a lot of nerve, Donald Trump, to come and talk about crises that are ongoing and how they wouldn't happen under his watch. But the crises that did happen under his watch, he completely botches and doesn't want to speak about those. Some nerve, I tell you. It wasn't just COVID. It was long before COVID. There was all kind of stuff happening long before COVID. The economy was relatively good for the most part under Trump. The economy has been relatively good for the most part under Biden. Look here. In 2021, it was like the roaring 20s out here. 2020 and 2021. Biden took office in January 20th of 2021. 2021 to 2022, it was the roaring 20s out here. Everybody went out and got fast cars. They were blowing money left and right, buying all the shit they wanted to. 2022, inflation starts to be persistent, so people start complaining a little bit more. 2023, the economy takes a little bit of a downturn. 2024, we're right back to roaring again. So if you look at almost 4 years of Biden's administration and the 4 years of Trump's administration, it's a similar picture in reality. Because the first 2 years of Trump's administration, he inherited Barack Obama's good economy. Yeah, he inherited a good economy. He wasn't left with a shitty economy. He wasn't left with windows shattered out of the Capitol building from people storming the Capitol building. He wasn't left with any of that shit. He was left with record low unemployment rate, record low gas prices, record corporate profits for American car industry makers, Ford, GM, Chrysler, Chevrolet. All of them have made billions of dollars because Barack Obama saved the auto industry. Y'all never want to give him credit for it, but he was the one that did it. Manufacturing was slightly coming back. That continued. So what he did was he took credit for everything that Barack Obama had put in motion and already on trajectory. And this is how foul Americans are. You always do this. This is how we know you're foul. You won't give Barack Obama any credit. You try to act like Donald Trump did it, but you can't name anything that he passed in his first 2 years, because he didn't pass nothing in his first 2 years. What signature legislation did Donald Trump pass in 2 years to make the great economy? Nothing. The first 2 years he was solely worried about repealing the Affordable Care Act. So that's how you could tell that the economy was riding off the high tails of what Barack Obama had already done. But you all are foul. You're not truthful. You're fake and you're phony. And you won't give credit where credit is due. It's okay. I know you. I know you. Nothing's going to change about y'all doing that kind of shit. Then by the time we get to 2018-19, that's when we started seeing hiccups in the system. 2019, the economy was going down the drain. Going little. Financial institutions were closing up. Money was locking up. Then COVID hit, and magically and gratefully, they had something to blame the economic situation on. But things were already going sideways by 2018, 2019. Yeah. Real people who study economics know. I know. But you can still make a lot of money. You've always been able to make a lot of money in America. You can make a lot of money now. There's just some losers and lazy people that want to complain, waiting around for a crash. Yeah, you hear them on the internet. The housing market's going to crash any day now. They've been saying that for 4 years. The economy is going to crash. They've been saying that for 4 years. Unemployment is going to skyrocket. They've been saying that for 4 years. And none of that's happened. They've been saying we were going to go into a recession for 4 years. As soon as Biden and Harris stepped a foot into Oval Office, they said we're going to go into recession. We haven't had a recession yet. I'm just telling y'all what they've been saying, what I've been hearing. And none of it has come to fruition. So at some point you got to stop listening to these wannabe fake Nostradamuses. As somebody properly coined the phrase doomer channels. Yeah, you got all these doomer channels on social media telling you the sky is going to fall out. The stock market is going to crash. They all got to eat crow. 40,000 plus Dow Jones. They got to start eating crow. So all of these wealthy people, they've actually made just as much money as they made under Trump, under Biden. But think about it like this. They made just as much money under Biden as they did under Trump, but without artificially inflating the market and rigging it in their favor. No tax cuts for them. No PPP, where they could buy back their stocks. That's all that money was used for, to be honest with you. Let's be honest about it. So rich people, they should be really neutral in all of this, to be honest with you. Biden hasn't hurt their bottom line one bit. They've made a lot of money. Go and talk with Bezos. Jeff Bezos has made more money under Biden than he did under Trump. Sure, Trump gave him the tax cut and they did the PPP money, but he didn't even need all of that to make a whole lot of money. Yeah, he didn't need that. So you all, we're not going to support, going backwards. We're not going to support going backwards. Everybody that knows what happened knows what happened. And people will be like, well, food prices, that literally, that's the only thing they can talk about, food prices. And I'm not saying that's not important, but they don't have any solution for it. Are they going to go in the grocery store and make craft legislation about lowering certain food items? Doubtful, they haven't done it so far. No, you're not going to see anything like that. So, when they suggest or bring us something to say, here's what we're going to do, X, Y, and Z to lower inflation, I love to see it. When they present something like that, I'd love to see it. I'll wait. We'll all wait. I don't think we'll be seeing it. Yeah, one person just said it was too much chaos and drama. That's why they couldn't go with him again. I feel you, though. I feel you. No, there's just too much there. And then they look at what's happening in New York and they're like, it's going to be the same old shit show again. But probably this time worse. You know, some people are like, oh, it can't get any worse. We survived. You know, I had one person tell me, we survived 4 years of Trump. Well, let's preference that. 1 million American citizens did not survive. They lost their life to COVID. All the independent medical research and surveys say that 300,000 of those deaths were preventable. So about 250,000 deaths were preventable completely. Had people not, been talking about fake magical cures like hydroxychloroquine, and all kinds of other things. Had public health measures been, preached to the citizenry and told to respect. So all the folks that say, oh, it's no big deal, we survived the first 4 years. Well, I don't think with all of what happened, it's worth chancing. I don't think so. I wouldn't. But to each their own. You're going to have to make a choice. It's up to you. I will say this. It's going to have lasting and long-term ramifications, whatever your choices are. So choose wisely. Me personally, I saw through bullshit from when he came down the golden escalator. I knew it was all bullshit. Telling folks that, people from Mexico are sending their rapists, murderers, and thieves. All that was, to create division, conflict amongst people. A lot of folks bought it, hook, line, and sinker, though. I'm not surprised, though. Honestly speaking, I can't be shocked. I mean, when you have Congress members in the Congress like Marjorie Taylor Greene and a whole host of others, they represent 761,000 citizens. So it's certainly a whole swath of Americans that are, susceptible to that type of bullshit and rhetoric. So it wasn't surprising. But 2016 should be a teachable moment in terms of when you vote for the couch. The couch is not going to save you. That's really the lesson we should learn from 2016 to not repeat in 2024. And we'll see if people learn that lesson or not. We shall see.